the role or differences between security engineers and chief information security officers. A lot of people merge them together, that they're essentially the same career track. They're the same mindset. And to be honest, that's what's created one of the biggest problems we have in cybersecurity today. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, my friends. I hope it's your favorite time of the week because it's my favorite time where we get to go in and talk about being a world-class CISO. So welcome to Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. E is in the house. Today's topic is one that has got a lot of discussion and a lot of debate, which is the role or differences between security engineers and chief information security officers. A lot of people merge them together, that they're essentially the same career track. They're the same mindset. And to be honest, that's what's created one of the biggest problems we have in cybersecurity today. One of the biggest problems we have in cybersecurity today is that we have people with the title of a chief information security officer that don't know what that is, and they're not performing the job because they were never trained. They think it's a technical track for security engineers. They're losing trust of the executives. The executives feel like they have nobody to talk to about cyber. And now we have this big division where the executives feel isolated from cybersecurity. Cybersecurity feels isolated from the executives, and essentially communication is broken down. And this is why we're having so many problems and challenges today. So if we want to fix the problem, we don't necessarily need more tech. AI isn't going to solve this problem, right? So I'm not saying AI is bad, but I'm saying it's not going to necessarily help with this specific issue. What we have to do is retrain our mind, our industry, and reset expectations that a security engineer is a completely different career track than a chief information security officer. If we can solve that problem and we can convince people they are two different careers, they are two different roles, they are two different mindsets, the biggest problem and challenge we have in cybersecurity, we could solve very, very quickly. But I'll tell you right now, when I go into businesses and I go and talk to organizations that are struggling in cybersecurity or having multiple breaches, or they can't seem to get their arms around the problem even though they're spending money, I almost can guarantee what it is. And it's I sit down with the execs and they say, we don't really trust our CISO. Too technical, they don't understand business, they can't speak English. We try to ask them questions and they go off on these tangents. It's like they're speaking another language. We can't understand or communicate with them. And then the security engineer, the CISO, or the security engineer disguised as a CISO, tells me, Eric, nobody listens to me. The executives don't do what I say. Nobody follows me. And I'm like, it's because you're not speaking English. Now, whenever I have this discussion, one of the things that some people always come up is they're like, but Eric, why do we have to change? Why can't the executives change? Well, here's the reality. Couple of ways to look at this. First, do you really want your execs to be technical? Look at how long and hard it took you to understand cybersecurity. You really expect your executives to understand cyber and know the technical language and know the lingo? And even if they had the time, do you really want that? Because then the question is, if the executives know cyber as well as you and can speak the language as well as you, then why do they need you? Right? So that's flawed, where whenever I hear people go, well, the executives should learn to speak our language, not the other way. I'm like, that's just so backwards. It makes absolutely no sense. And do you really want that? Do you really want that? That would be one of the worst things that could ever happen. Second, the reality is this. Anybody who has a C and an O. If your title begins with the letter C and ends with the letter O, Chief Officer, that is a business role. It is focused on growing and expanding the business. Put whatever letters you want in between. It's focused on growing and expanding the business. So CEOs, COOs, CFOs shouldn't be down in the weeds. They shouldn't be understanding the tech. They should be going in and speaking and understanding business. How can we expand the business, grow the business, increase revenue, increase profitability? That's what world-class executives do and why they get paid so much money. So the reality is, if you're a chief officer, a chief information security officer, last time I checked, CISO begins with a C and ends with an O. So you're a chief officer, which means your role is to focus on the growth and expansion of the business. So if you're not doing that, you're not doing the job that you're being paid to do. So just with that backdrop, let's just jump in and start looking at these two roles. A security engineer is a technical role. It's somebody who goes in and understands risk. They know threats and vulnerabilities, and they are very technical. They can go through code. They can usually perform some sort of pen testing, security assessments. They can go across an organization. They can go across business processes, and they understand in detail where the vulnerabilities are to an organization. What are the exposures? So essentially, a security engineer is somebody who looks for problems. That's what makes them so good at what they do. This was something that I had to work with. And if you want more information on sort of how to be the best version you can be, I don't know if you know, but I have a second podcast that I do every week called Bulletproof Cyber. And Bulletproof Cyber is focused on how to be the best version. It's not focused on the technical, the CISO, anything like that. It's how to be the best version you can be. And one of the things I've talked about in many episodes is what makes you so good as a security engineer could make it very difficult to have a joyous, fun, enjoyable life. Because if we're really good at problem solving, we're really good at finding problems. Problem solving is the CISO. Finding problems is the security engineer. So security engineers, we are really good at finding problems. We do that 8, 10, 12 hours a day. So what do you think happens when we go home and we get together with our family? We're always looking for problems. What do you think happens when we get together with our friends? We're always looking for problems. What kind of life is that going to lead to? You're going to be highly, highly successful and highly sought after as a security engineer. But if you're always looking for problems, if you're always looking for what's wrong, if you're always looking for what's broken, there's not a lot of room left for looking for good, happiness, or joy, right? So this is why you see a lot of technical people, including myself, sometimes get a little down, depressed, frustrated, or we become workaholics because that's where we find our peace. In work, as a security engineer, finding problems, you get rewarded. People like it. They compliment you. At home and in your personal life, finding problems you push people away. They get upset. They get critical. They're like, why are you always insulting me or criticizing me? Why are you always telling me what's wrong? It's like, because that's what I do. Right? So what you need to make sure is what makes you so good as a security engineer, you need to realize that you need to turn that off when you go home. When you go home, you need to look for the good. You need to compliment. You need to enjoy that, hey, life's imperfections is what makes life amazing, and you need to be able to find that balance so you have an amazing life. Because I know many folks, and I was trapped in this for a while, where I had an amazing career, but the personal life was struggling for that exact reason. So just be aware of what makes you so good at work might be a negative in the personal life. So security engineers, finding problems. That's what they're good at. Technical. Going in, digging through, looking at configurations, looking at code, looking at rule sets, and finding weaknesses, finding vulnerabilities. That's what makes them great. However, that makes for an awful CISO, because a chief information security officer isn't technical. Yes, they need to understand the technology. That's why most of the world-class CISOs that I work with typically have done security for a few years, just a few. I'll explain that in a minute. Not a long time, but a few. Yes, to be a world-class CISO, you must understand business and you must understand security and how to mix the two together. Quite different. Security engineers, they don't need to know business. They don't care about business. They're going to go in and they're going to find problems and expect all the problems to be fixed. They don't look at profit, revenue, any of that stuff. From a security engineer's mindset, every vulnerability must be fixed. From a CISO standpoint, we know that if security negatively impacts the business, security is wrong. That's something that CISOs know, CISOs own, and CISOs love, and that's something that makes security engineers bonkers. Security engineers cannot accept that there might be a situation where the business comes first. There might be a situation where a vulnerability doesn't get fixed because it's not in the best interest of the business. They struggle with that. They have a difficult time with it. CISOs own it, know it, live it, love it. So a CISO is really a combination. You have the CO, the chief officer, right? The outer layers, that's business. You need to know business. If you don't understand business, if you don't understand that the purpose of a business is to grow and expand. Even, I use profit and revenue, but just so we're clear, even if you work for nonprofit or government, you still have, at some level, you might call it different, but you still have profit and revenue. You still have a budget. You still have money that you have to spend and produce an outcome. So whether it's officially called revenue and profit, or it's called your budget, or it's called whatever, the reality is any entity or organization that exists must have money coming in and money going out. You have to have money coming in and you have to have money going out in the form of expenses. You're not going to run any successful entity without that. So I just call it revenue and profit. You can call it whatever you want, but I always have people go, oh, but no, Eric, I'm a CISO for a nonprofit, or I'm a CISO for a government. I don't have to worry about that. That is one of the biggest mistakes. You are still getting money, you are still getting funding, you still have expenses, and you still have to manage that accordingly. So a chief officer, you have to make sure you're focused on how do we make the organization as healthy as possible. COs are focused on growth and expansion and health of a business. Then the middle letters show what your focus is. So information security is what a CISO is going to use as their superpower. So they're going to use cybersecurity, applying it to the business to help make the business as healthy and expand and grow as possible. So huge difference there. So hopefully right out of the gate, you can see a big difference. Here's the other huge difference. Security engineers look for problems. CISOs solve problems. Security engineers get paid on finding all the problems. Because if you only find 10% of the problems, the other 90% are going to get you. So security engineers that are world-class find all of the problems. They're very good at comprehensiveness. CISOs solve the problem, and they only typically focus on 15 or 20%. A CISO is not going to solve every problem. They're not going to solve every vulnerability because the reality is you can't. The reality is it doesn't make sense from a budgetary standpoint. It doesn't make sense from a running the business standpoint. And most important, my friends, they all don't matter. We're only caring about the ones with a high likelihood and a high impact. Everything else is less important. So CISOs accept a level of risk that security engineers do not. So that's huge difference. So hopefully you're appreciating that they're really quite different mindset, quite different in the career path, quite different in how they work, operate, and function. Now, whenever I say they're different, somebody always comes back and goes, but Eric, I disagree. A CISO must have some experience in security. Yeah, I said that. You must have business and you must have security. But here's the reality. Here's the biggest mistake. The number one misconception and the number one mistake that people make is they think a CISO is a progression on the career track for security engineer. So one of the biggest mistakes, and I hear this all the time, and people always criticize me when they see my ads for my CISO certification, where I create world-class CISOs. One of the number one pieces of criticism I get over and over and over again is, Eric, you can't teach somebody how to be a CISO. The only way to be a CISO is to be a security engineer for 10 or 12 years and then get promoted to a CISO title. So basically, it's after you are a world-class security engineer, 10, 12 years, then sort of as the reward for doing that, you get the CISO title. That, my friends, is the biggest problem we have in cybersecurity today. It is wrong, it is flawed, and is creating more incompetent CISOs than any other mindset. The longer you do something, the better you become at it. So let me ask you a question. If for 12 years, you are technical, you love technology, you love the bits, you love the bytes, you love the code. Well, I'm assuming you do, because why else would you have done it for 12 years? Right? So I doubt that you would continue in a career path that you don't love. So I'm assuming if you're doing something for at least a decade or longer, you love it and enjoy it. So why would you want to do something different? Why not keep doing it? Why not be a security engineer for 20 years? Why not be a chief scientist? I know security engineers that have niche businesses in certain areas. Like I have a friend of mine, he is one of the best security engineers in finding vulnerabilities, doing pseudo, because it's really not called a pen test in the industry, but sort of pseudo pen tests and identifying flaws, vulnerabilities, and issues in nuclear reactors. He gets paid more than most CISOs that I know of. So it's this weird mindset that people think the only way to get paid more and the only way to advance their career is they got to move into a CISO, and the reality is not. There's actually a lot more growth opportunities, right, on the security engineer side because it's such a valued field as long as you keep those technical skills up. So it has nothing to do with money. But here's the question then. If you're doing something for 10 or 12 years, not only do you love it, not only do you enjoy it, not only do you have fun doing it, but you're really good at it. So now we're saying is take something you love, take something you enjoy, take something you're really, really good at it, and then we're basically telling you to stop doing that. So after 12 years, I'm now going to give you the CISO title. I'm giving you no training, no expectations, nothing else. You think it's just an advancement, so you continue doing what you've always done. The problem is a CISO is somebody who's supposed to sit on the board. A CISO is somebody who's supposed to meet with the other chief officers. A CISO is somebody who's supposed to converse business and do high-level cybersecurity risk analysis and translate cybersecurity into business for the CEO, COO, and CFO. But if nobody ever told them that and nobody ever trained them on that, they're not going to do that. They're going to continue to find problems. They're going to continue to talk technical. They're going to get frustrated because now they think they have a CISO title and everyone's supposed to magically listen to them, but they're not speaking English. They're not speaking a language that other people understand. The other executives are frustrated with them, and it's a disaster. It doesn't really work. Now, I am a firm believer in you can do anything you want. You can live the life of your dreams. You can create the most beautiful life that's ever existed. So, I want to be careful here. If you're a security engineer for 12 years and you really in your heart want to become a CISO, I'm not saying you can't. I don't want you to sit there and go, Eric said I can't do no. I'm a Spud Webb fan. I always love, because if you go to these motivational conferences, I love learning, because to me, you can't be a world-class CISO if you're not in optimal health. That's why I exercise and I push fitness. And you can't be a world-class CISO if you're not clear and focused on who you are and what you want. So I'm a big fan in personal development, exercise as foundational items. And it's funny because for the longest time, they would always go, you can do or be whatever you want, but there's limits. And people would give the example, it's you can't be 5'5" and play in the NBA. Right? So you gotta be realistic at some level. And then I love it. Spud Webb comes along, I think he was 5'4". Not only did he play in the NBA, but he won the slam dunk contest multiple years in a row. Here's a dude that is a good 18 to 24 inches smaller than any other person on the playing field. NBA players are tall, right? Basketball, right? Most of them are 6'6", 7 foot. And here's this 5'4" dude going out there making baskets, taking shots, winning the slam dunk contest. So that sort of shattered the personal development field, where it's like, okay, I guess if you're 5'4" and you believe in yourself enough, you can even play in the NBA. So from that standpoint, yes, I have seen security engineers 15 years that have been great CISOs. I have a few success cases where I have folks who have done it for 18, 20 years, and they, in their hearts of hearts, no longer want to do it. They want to completely switch, become business focused, understand business, know business, and make a total, complete career track. And guess what? They did. So I just want to be clear. I'm not saying you can't do it. You absolutely can. But you have to realize it's a complete identity shift. You're completely changing how you think, who you are, and what you do to move from a security engineer to a CISO. It's not just an automatic switch. It's not just going to wake up one day, oh, new title, I'm going to keep doing the same thing. No. New title, completely mind shift on how you think, how you operate, and how you do the job. So just realize you can switch, but you need to realize they are different positions. And this, as I said, is why we're struggling today, is because CISOs are security engineers, or security engineers pretending to be CISOs, and they don't talk business, they can't communicate with the execs, and they're not fitting in. If you're a security engineer, you hang out with technical people. You should enjoy talking to technical people, and when you talk to non-technical people, they shouldn't really understand you. I remember when I was a security engineer, and I used to go out with some of my other security engineers, and our significant others would come with us. Certain points of the conversation, we'd look over and be like, they have no clue what we're saying. They would just laugh. They're like, oh, you guys are so cute. We just love when you geek out, but we have no idea what you're talking about, right? Because it's a completely different language, and that's okay, and we enjoy that and like that. CISOs enjoy business. CISOs want to be around business folks. They want to talk business. So if you're a CISO and you're spending most of your time with technical folks and most of your time talking tech, and that's what you enjoy, you're really not meant to be a CISO, and that's okay. That's nothing wrong with it. We sort of have this misconception in cybersecurity that every security engineer must want to be a CISO, and it's false. Do what you love, my friends. If you love the technical and you love the finding problems and you love the geeking out, geek out. Go for it, man. Be the best geek you are. Right? But if you're deciding that, hey, I like security for a little bit, but I'm ready to become a strategist. I'm ready to move from tactical to strategy. I'm ready to start building businesses, growing businesses, and I'm fascinated more with the business. then you should look at transitioning into a CISO role. Now, the question I always get from folks is, but Eric, if I've been a security engineer, maybe a little longer, 8, 9 years, how do I actually switch? Because if I don't have the experience, how do I get the experience? This is where going in and being a manager of security, director of security, or now what you're seeing is because CISOs are taking on so much. The correct way, in my opinion, of a CISO is a CISO should be one of the top 5. So in an organization, you have your top 4. You have your CEO, your COO, your CFO, and your chief legal counsel. To me, the 5th one that should be at all those key meetings should be the CISO. Why? Cybersecurity encompasses a key part of the business. Risk is CISO, going in, and tolerance, IT, all those things are under it. But what's happened is, and this is where we're creating more problems, because most companies hired security engineers as a CISO, and they're not really a CISO and they're not doing the job, and executives are struggling. What they're now doing is they're going in and they're hiring somebody with more of a business background to be the chief compliance officer, or the chief risk officer, or the chief this officer. What they're really doing is they're stripping things away from the CISO and giving it to a business person so they can speak and understand it. And then because most businesses, by law, if you're publicly traded, you need a CISO, they just have the CISO in title only, but really they're stripping all the responsibility away from it. But then you get in a situation where the CISO gets frustrated because now they're getting pushed lower and lower in the organization, and essentially all of their responsibilities are being done by others, and it's not working because now you have one person doing compliance, one person doing risk, one doing security, and they're all different, and they're not talking, and they're tripping over each other. So if we're really doing this structure correctly and really setting up an organization the way it's supposed to be set up, there should be that CISO at the top, one of the top 5, and then risk, compliance, IT availability, all those other factors fall under it. Data protection, data loss, confidentiality, integrity, all those things fall under the CISO, and now you have a unified group. But in order for that to happen, we have to get the executives to trust the CISO again. And the way we get executives to trust the CISO is by getting them to think, act, and be a business person. And the way to do that is by being a deputy CISO, or being a manager, being a director. So a lot of folks that come to me that are really good at security, they don't really have a lot of experience in business. I'm like, find a really good CISO who's really open, who probably has about 3 years before retirement, and pitch them to be their deputy. And you'll help them, you'll assist them, mentor them. And 3 years is perfect, because if you're doing deputy CISO work for 3 years, you're transitioning to the business mindset, you're being trained by a world-class leader, and then what's natural is then when that person leaves in 3 years, you become the CISO. So with a lot of my clients that want to be CISOs at Fortune 100 companies, it's a non-conventional path. I'm like, what we're doing right now is we're researching all the Fortune 100 companies, and we're finding which ones have top-notch CISOs that are 3 to 4 years away from retirement. And then we pitch them. Most of them don't have a deputy yet. But we're in a perfect time and place right now because world-class CISOs at Fortune 100 companies are getting more and more pushed on their plate, more and more responsibilities. So they're at the point where they're overly saturated. So if you approach them and say, listen, highly respect your work, highly respect what you're doing. I know that I've been a security engineer and I'm ready to switch. I have some business experience, but not near enough to be a CISO. And I was wondering if you would consider creating a deputy position where I could be your deputy. I'll take whatever work you don't want initially, whatever it is, I'll take it off your plate. So now you have somebody to task who understands the tech. But my goal is over the next 3 to 4 years is that I would slowly be trained and mentored by you, understand the business, learn how to be a CISO. And at some point when you decide to move on or transition, I can then take over that position. And I tell you, we have a few folks. I started doing this about 5 years ago, and it's working magically. We have 3 or 4 people that in the last year or two have taken over the CISO spot, and they're now in a Fortune 100 company, and it's brilliant because here's the reality. In most cases, to get to a Fortune 100, you're going to have a lot of experience, be inside, or have a lot of knowledge. So if you do the route where I'm just going to apply outside for the job directly, it probably could take you 6 to 8 years. But if you get in early in a mentoring position with a deputy CISO, it's brilliant. So I'm pushing hard this deputy CISO. A lot of CISOs really like it. It's a great way for you to get the experience and knowledge you need and be able to expand and move into that position. But the bottom line is, remember, security engineers are needed, CISOs are needed, both need to have an understanding of cyber. Security engineers need an in-depth technical knowledge focused on the problem. CISOs need to merge that general security knowledge with business from a strategic level and solve problems. Both are needed, both are required, but what I urge you is do some soul searching, figure out what it is you really love to do, and follow your dream.